Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Steph Sells Homes podcast. This is episode 35, and today we have a very special guest with us. His name is Nick McGrue. He's a real estate lawyer, also an investor, and a really good friend of mine, and he's a local here in LA. So I'm really excited to have him on and share a little bit about what he does and learn a lot about syndication and a whole bunch of fun stuff. So welcome, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Steph. Yeah, I'm happy to be on here too. And yeah, always good when I'm in your presence. And yeah, happy to share anything that can be helpful with your audience.
Yeah, I know. So Nick and I, just for a little backstory, I always like to share with people like how we met and how this came about. We met in Houston, right? When I
hmm
spoke, we both were speakers at Kehlani's event in Houston, and we so happened to sit in the same table, and then we right away connected, and so happened that we were in the same city, same area,
Yep.
and we hit it off well. And every time I see Nick, we see each other like out of state. We don't see each, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting here. But
Yep.
I just saw him in Vegas too at another golf tournament, and yeah, and that's when this whole conversation came about. And I said, I think we should have a podcast together and share with people what it is that you do, and just share knowledge. So, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people what it is that you do and who you service? Yeah.
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Nick McGrue. I have the law firm of PolyMath Legal PC. At PolyMath Legal, we help real estate investors lawfully raise capital so they can generate passive income and create generational wealth. So if you got a project going on and you need to raise that equity portion of the capital stack, I'm the one that can help you with the legal side. I don't help you actually raise the capital, but I make sure that you have all the documents in place, that you're following all the laws, so that you're not going to, be like a Bernie Madoff or anything when you're raising that capital.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that. Like I have some investors, right, who are looking to raise capital. How would they need to position themselves and get everything ready for, for that to happen?
Yeah, so a lot of people actually don't even realize, if they're raising capital, kind of all the additional laws that come into play.
Mm,
Um, to simply put, and this is not always, the law is always nuanced, and lawyers always say it depends and maybe, because that's true, that's what the answer is. But if we're going to
mm,
think about it in the general sense, in most cases, if you have a passive investor, then you're selling a security. And if you're selling a security, you have to either register that security or have an exemption from registration. Registration is an expensive process. It's a long process. And in the real estate game, we don't have the time to do registration. And so I
right.
help clients figure out what is an exemption that's going, or which exemptions could they use, and then what's going to be the one that's best for them based upon their goals, their investors, their time frame, all of that sort of stuff.
Got it. Talk a little bit more about the fun stuff that we don't like to talk about, which is the legal aspects of it, right? What is it that you do on the back end to ensure that they're just, in a good place to structure the deal and also underwrite the deal?
Yeah, so unlike a public company or a registered company,
Mhm.
those companies, they're going to have to give a lot of information publicly. We could go on to any publicly registered company and we could see exactly how much the CEOs are making, what their bonuses were. We could see a lot of their expenses, things like that. So anybody that's investing in like public stocks, we have that they're legally required to make all that information public. Whereas if we're talking about a private deal, you're not going to have to put that information out in the public. And so the SEC says, look, people are investing in your deal. They are spending money in your project. You are the one that knows what skeletons are buried. You're the one that knows the things that kind of keep you up at night. You're the one that knows there's things that can make the deal go great or the things that can make the deal go really, really bad. And so you got to
Right.
expose that stuff. So essentially what we're doing when you're selling a private security like that, there's going to be a PPM. It's a long document. A lot of clients hate me because I make them do that, but it's what you got to do to get all the disclosures. On the investor side, you might read that PPM and it seems kind of scary because it's going to say, the world could end. You could lose all your money. This could be a horrible, horrible, horrible deal. But give me some money anyway. But really what it's doing is that it's giving you the information so that you can evaluate that deal, or if you're the issuer, the ones selling the security, you're giving your investors that information so they can evaluate that deal to see, does it make sense for me, or maybe this is too risky and I don't want to invest in that. And so a lot of clients don't like PPMs because again, they are kind of scary if you're not used to them. And they're saying, look, I'm never going to be able to raise any capital with this. You're scaring them all away. And I always say, look, I would rather that we scare them away right now while you don't have their money. And because we're telling them about a worst case scenario that could possibly happen, we're going to do our best to make sure that it doesn't happen, but it could possibly happen. And so I'd rather scare them away right now and not have their money versus what if that bad thing does happen and you do have their money? Think of how much of a headache that's going to be that time. They're probably going to be calling the SEC, calling FINRA, calling all the financial organizations to investigate you. They're probably going to be calling you constantly. They're probably going to be telling all their friends. And so now, in addition to dealing with whatever issue came about, you're also going to have all the added hurdles and headaches that this upset investor is going to have. So I get that it stinks not, if these disclosures deter an investor. But for me, I say, look, I'd rather us not have that money and not have to worry about if the bad thing happens. Now we've got an extra headache to deal with versus scaring them away and saying, hey, yeah, you know what? This is a risky investment. All investments have risks. And if you don't like the risk that I'm telling you, then yeah, maybe this isn't one for you. And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there. I like to be super transparent as well and sort of set people up for worst case scenario and best case scenario. So I'm glad that you do that. Who's part of your team? Like, can you give me more insight on the team structure just so people have an understanding?
Yeah, we're a small team, but growing. So I'm the CEO and an attorney trying to slowly step away more so into the CEO role. I have an associate attorney. I've got a project manager and I've got a legal assistant. I've got a job a job listing out for an internship right now. And then we're working on the job listing for a paralegal. So intern will be hired probably in the next week or two, and paralegal hopefully in like the next month or two as well. So we're slowly growing. And, as we get more business, more clients, I'm looking forward to bringing more people onto the team.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. I was just talking to Cameron right now. This is where I record my podcast out of. And we were talking about having like a ADU meetup where we gear more towards multifamily investors. And I didn't mention your name, but I thought about having you, as the speaker for that event because I think you bring a lot of value. And a lot, whether you're a new investor or seasoned investor, I feel like this isn't everybody's, expertise, right? Understanding law. That's where you come into play. So yeah, I think we should definitely collab on that. And I can see us collaborating on a whole bunch of other stuff. I really like your branding too. I like what you stand for. I like the whole family vibes too. And I know we've connected on ADUs as well. So do you want to give people some insight on that? I know you've seen how quickly and how popular ADUs are here in LA and in your city too, specifically.
Yeah. I mean, me and my wife bought a house a year ago, and as we're looking at spots, half the listings are like extra income, accessory dwelling. That was almost ours didn't have one, but like almost all the stuff we're looking at, all the garages were converted. So yeah, that's the thing now for sure. One of the cool things though is that when I met you, and you were talking about it, I was like, wait, what? So multifamilies can do this. That was a shocker to me. And so I'll slowly talk with them because we have a triplex that has 3 full garages, and I'm like, there's some potential there. Then I think we have a 6 or 8 unit that also has garages. So I'm like, there's some potential going on there. And even in my own home, actually, our garage is detached. And so that's something that we might do at some point. We've been doing a whole bunch of other stuff.
I know that's what we had been talking about that first day, but then we quickly started talking about multifamily and 25% density rule. And you were like, what? You could actually do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. I mean, I'm in the real estate game, real estate law game, and I didn't know that. So I think that was a huge gem that you dropped there.
Yeah. And, right now I'm working with the property management company where I'm going to be doing a lot of asset management as far as, analyzing portfolios and seeing how we can maximize returns or maximize their unit count. Right. So I think having somebody like you is super important to have on the team aside from everybody else. But can you touch on, more of the benefits of syndication? Because I think right now, the type of market that we're in, it's just so unaffordable, especially here in California. feel like people need to learn more about syndication and figure out how they can structure deals with the right people, vet the
Mhm.
right people, and yeah, just touch a little bit more. I want to learn more about syndications as well.
Yeah, so one of the big benefits, particularly in the current market, is that you have the capital. Lending's gotten a lot harder. The rates are
Right.
more, so the cost of capital is more expensive. And
Mhm.
so with syndication, obviously your deal has to pencil out and you got to underwrite and whatnot. But you can say, look, you know what, bank, I don't need you. I've got a bunch of investors and we're going to buy this together. And so you theoretically could cut the bank all the way out. Or another thing that syndication can help with is that with your do you talk about DSCR in here? That service
We do.
coverage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
So
that very
having
popular in the syndication world too? Because I know
yeah,
this year that's probably all I've done, DSCR loans
yeah.
for the most part.
So with that now, you can, if you do syndication, you can make your loan lower, which is going to make you have a better DSCR there.
Mhm.
Also, sometimes just coming in with more equity, you're potentially going to get better loan terms as well. And so, especially with how lending has changed dramatically in the last like 6 to 9 months, if you had
Right.
to ask me a year ago, I had clients that were buying, multi-million-dollar multifamily assets, and getting in for getting a loan that's maybe even 80% of the value because they factor in renovations and stuff like that. So they're
Mhm.
getting loans that are covering the bulk of the acquisition. Now, I'm not surprised at all if I'm seeing loans that are like a 60% ratio. And so having that equity, if you went from having to bring in only 20% to now you're having to bring in 40%,
That
I
makes
don't
a
got an
huge
I don't got
difference.
double the
Yeah.
money, but I know some people that can chip in to where we can double that money nonetheless. So that's where
Right.
again another way where syndication can come in.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot, and I have a lot of clients who just want to learn more about it because that's really the only way that they can tap into this market, or for creating forced appreciation through
Mm-hmm.
ADUs, because of the rates and where we're at too. So yeah, I mean, I also see you hang out with Bina a lot. And can you explain a little bit more about that dynamic there and what you guys do together?
Yeah, she's like one of my best friends. Been friends with her
Mhm.
for more than a decade. She actually was one of her bosses, and this shows you how long it's gone. Venus a big time boss of her own now.
Yeah, she
But I
is.
knew her back when she had a boss.
Wow.
So her boss was actually my first law firm client, PolyMath Legal's first paying client, or at least the long term paying client.
Mhm.
That it was her boss. So when we were social friends before, she ended up. She ended up being roommates with one of my good friends right after law school. And so we were all living in Santa Monica. So we're all pretty close. And, we're like 25. And so we're hanging
Mhm.
out all the time. And so she was roommates with one of my law school friends. And we're all still, within a few blocks of each other. So always hanging out a lot. And so she was part of the crew. And so we got close that way, friend wise. And then when I started my firm, I had kind of been planning it for a while, but was afraid. I'm not sure when to launch and all that. And when I finally said, you know what, publish the website, well, I'm open for business. She calls me up on like a Wednesday and is like, hey, you do real estate law, right? And I was like, yeah, I do. Even though I hadn't really done a whole lot yet, but I was like, this is
Right.
what I'm going to be doing. And so she's like, well, great. We just fired our real estate attorney, and so I'm gonna have my boss bring you in and see, if we can be your client. And so I went in, met with her boss, and ended up being a client, and that was the client really that helped me probably actually have a firm, because you know how with any business at the beginning it's really hard
Right.
to generate business. And me, like looking back at it, I'm like, man, that was kind of crazy because I was like 25 or 26 starting a law firm, and like now it works because all of my friends are like up in their career, and so they all need lawyers and can afford lawyers. 26-year-olds probably don't know they need lawyers and definitely can't afford lawyers, but most of your business is going to be from your network. So that was a huge win there because it was a family-owned real estate company. They had one business that made a whole lot of money. And so one brother ran that business, and then they took the money from that business and invested it into real estate. And so I think when I had them, they had like 100 million square feet of commercial real estate spread throughout the country. So they had a
Mhm.
lot of different projects. And so I was there kind of outside general counsel and, help them with acquisitions, sales, vendor agreements. And so it was great because one, it was a early client that literally kept the lights on. But then also I was able to learn and actually apply and do a whole bunch in real estate law because it's a family-owned company and they're kind of they were run small, but they had a pretty big breadth. And so I was handling all sorts of different stuff. And so it allowed me to really learn lots of additional aspects of real estate law and the real estate industry overall. And so, I started with Vina back then. Then as she moved on, we kind of just guided her and her husband for like their own personal stuff. And then as she started doing syndication, I randomly had done. So one thing that people don't know about syndication is that all it is just pulling capital together. And so a lot of people, I primarily do it in real estate, and that's what a lot of people associate it with. But really anything that you're pulling capital together to buy, a syndication can be a tool there. I was talking with somebody a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it's still for sale, but they're talking about how BET is up for sale. And I was like, yeah, syndication, that's the way you could buy that. Like, seriously, obviously you have a lot of capital raised, but that's something you can do syndication as well. And so I had done a syndication for a winery. I had a client that was a winery and they needed to raise some capital for operations. And so we sold a small portion of the winery. And so I did a syndication for that. I had another client that had a movie script. And so he was like, I got this movie project. I want to shoot it. I want to make the movie. And so he raised $800,000 through syndication to make the movie. And so I had those clients a couple years before. And then Vina reaches out and is like, hey, have you heard of this syndication thing? I'm thinking about buying a larger asset and need to raise capital. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've done it. I've done it for a winery. I've done it for a movie thing. And so doing it for real estate, because at that time I was much more focused and honed in on real estate. And so I was like, doing it for real estate would be much better because that's kind of what I know a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so did her first couple. And then I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And it's kind of, I didn't have really a niche yet. I did real estate law, so I had a focus, but this is a very specialized niche in there. And so I was like, oh, this might be a way to kind of distinguish me a little bit. And I liked it. And so from there, I just continued on and slowly kept doing her deals, slowly started meeting more people and kind of grew and went from there.
You cut out a little bit, but I heard most of it. And I think that's a good point. A lot of people don't understand that you can syndicate almost anything, right? As long as you just bring people together and set clear expectations, you can pretty much buy businesses too. I met with a friend yesterday who comes from tech, and he's looking to buy businesses, and he has a lot of people that have capital, but want to be more of a passive investor. So maybe talk a little bit about those roles, right? What is an LP? What is a GP? And how do you identify roles? And if you're like let's say a new investor who has the capital but doesn't want to be as involved, right? Who should you partner up with, and what? Just maybe break down those roles for people.
Yeah. So GP and LP, this is what the real estate industry calls them. And I'm always like, it's not a GP and LP, it's a manager and investor. But I know what you mean. So I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why that is. So LLCs are actually relatively new. They didn't get widespread adoption until the mid 90s. And so before, when you're doing something like this, you basically could be a corporation, which has double taxation, which sucks. Or you could be like a regular partnership, but then everybody has personal liability if things go bad. So that also stinks. So one other option that you had was called the limited partnership structure. And a limited partnership has basically two classes of partners. There's a general partner and there's limited partners. There can be an unlimited number of either type, but there must be at least one of each. Right. So the general partners, that's like the manager. In a limited partner structure, the general partner is always personally liable. The limited partners are only personally liable if they're the ones that cause the liability. And so for a long time, that was probably the better structure to do this type of stuff in. And so those names have stuck. But now how I structure it is I have a management LLC that acts as the general partner, and I have a investor LLC that's like the limited partner. And the reason we use LLCs is because that provides limited liability protection to everybody. And so, but yeah, so LP, GP, LP is the investor, the GP is the manager, the issuer, the operator, the one that's running the deal. So if you're an investor and you're thinking about doing this, you really want to vet your GPs. You want to, get to know them, call them. Are they responsive when you call them? Because that can be an indicator of how they're going to be when they have your money and you're asking them questions. Ask to talk with other previous investors, see how they liked it, and kind of interview them and see what's going on. Ask to see what their track record is. Obviously, track record can't guarantee future results, but it's a good indicator at the very least. One thing that I would ask them about a time where an investment kind of went awry or went sour or something went wrong, and ask them what they did to mitigate that or to fix it or correct it. Because the investments do have risks, and I go into investments knowing that, but I also want to know, okay, yeah, things can't always go perfect, but when they don't go perfect, what are you going to do? Are you going to get scared and like curl up and just take it? Or are you going to do things that are trying to protect my money? Because that's what I want you to do. And so those are some things that I would look into if I was trying to invest in a new person, is trying to figure out, who are you? What are you trying to do? What can you do when things go wrong? What have you done in the past? Whatever other questions I have that's going to make me comfortable or confident that when I give you this money, not only are you going to give it back to me, but you're also going to give me back more, because that's the goal at the end of the day.
That's really the goal there. Yeah. So what are some expected, like, I don't know, general returns? I guess it depends on the market, right? But maybe for those new investors who don't even know like how to underwrite a deal or how to vet. I know you talked about how to vet them through their track record and other things, but let's say they don't even know how to vet, right? What are some of the things that you would say they should look out for?
So at least for the first part of your question, dealing with kind of splits and things like that in return, like you said, it does depend deal by deal.
Right.
But a common type of structure you might see is they might say we're going to do a 70-30, or we're going to do an 8% pref with a 70-30 split. What that means is the 8% pref means that before we split anything, I'm going to make sure that you, the investor, and any other investor gets an 8% annual return on their money. So if I invest $100,000, before we're splitting with the GP, the manager, I'm going to get $8,000. And the other investors are going to get 8% as well. Once they've given me my pref, and in this case, 8% for the year, then if there's additional money that we can give to the owners, investors, etc., we're going to split that 70-30. Investors are going to get a pro rata share, so an equal divided up share based upon your ownership interest of 70%. And then the management team is going to get 30% of that. Sometimes what you might see is that you might see 8% pref, a 70-30 split, and then 50-50 once we get you to a 15% cash on cash return or some other metric. What you're doing there is you're doing the same thing I said before. You're getting that pref. So before we split anything, I'm going to get a certain return for my money. So that forces the manager to work, because they don't get to split all profits. They got to pay me a certain amount first, and then they split. So they're doing that like the last example. But then once I get a 15% cash on cash return, then we adjust that split. And the reason for that is essentially the manager will set whatever that metric is. And they're saying, look, if we hit this, that means we're knocking it out of the park for you. So if we've knocked it out of the park for you, we're gonna lower down those returns, or adjust the split.
Adjust the returns, yeah.
Yeah, because we've been doing so much work, and so the reason we knocked it out of the park is we've done the work, so we should get more. And me as an investor, I don't care, because I'm like, yeah, they had a 70-30 split. I got my 8%. I got a 15% cash on cash. So sure, yeah, you've been doing good work. I'm happy to split with you, because I probably got more out of this investment than I was expecting to anyway. So any additional stuff is just extra gravy on top.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty black and white for me. So hopefully it is for other people. Anything else you want to share as far as I don't know, maybe on tenants a little bit? Touch on tenants.
Tenants. So we don't actually do any landlord tenant law, but what I will say, especially to any landlord in California, have yourself a landlord tenant lawyer, not a real estate lawyer like me. You want somebody that this is what they do day in and day out. The reason is, like, I could figure this stuff out kind of, but these laws are very nuanced, and California is very tenant favorable. And so you don't want to make mistakes. And you also want to know kind of how is the court going to interpret certain actions, or what are some best practices to resolve these certain issues. So even me, my condo is still sitting empty. I need to get it rented out. But when I have one, if I have
need help with that. Like
I know. If I have an issue, even me, I'm gonna call up a landlord tenant attorney to get the very specific advice from somebody who's in those trenches doing that work day in and day out. Because if you mess up one small thing, you're gonna start all the way over, and it just becomes a very non-fun process a lot of times. And so you really
when it's
do
a
want
shit
to make
show,
sure.
shit show
What was that?
here. Yeah. I said
Yeah,
it's a
you.
shit show here in
Yeah.
California for sure. But no, I appreciate you saying that because yeah, it has to be like a niche, right,
Hmm.
for that person. So I agree. I think you do a good job of staying in your lane and doing what it is that you're very knowledgeable in. So um, I know you touched on vetting people. I think one good way to vet people is through relationships. And we met a whole bunch of dope people at the charity golf tournament. So I kind of wanted you to touch on what were some of your key takeaways and who did you connect with? And kind of just share with people, right, how important it is to be in those circles and be in those spaces.
Yeah, you said it first. You know, our slogan at the firm is relationship first. And actually, we just got notice that the trademark is about to be approved, so y'all
Oh,
can't use
nice.
that. But yeah, I can all the things in my life, all the successes, I can
Mhm.
always look back and say it happened, or the catalyst came from some relationship that I had. So I actually came up with that slogan like back when I started over 13, 14 years ago.
Mhm.
So I was like, man, how did I get here? I was like, my relationships are what got me here. And even now, looking today, how did I get here? Again, it's relationships. You know, my firm, other than the $100 Google ad credit I got when I launched the website a decade or so ago, have
Mhm.
it spent $0 on advertising. And instead, it's all
Wow.
referral, it's all relationships. And so you know, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I'm dead tired because I've been at conferences the last 3 weekends. It's been a
Mhm.
lot of fun, but I'm like, I'm a homebody. And so, and I have busy weeks. And so usually the weekends where I, decompress. But I've been out kind of meeting folks, speaking on stages and getting to know more people. And that is how I've grown my business to where, a decade ago, I wasn't sure if I would be able to feed myself. And I've got, three full-time employees, a part-time coming on, and probably another full-time, and feeding all of them, all of that from relationships, all of that from referral business. So I cannot emphasize how important the relations are and relationships are. And so, yeah, even though I'm like, I'm dead tired, I'm like, I'm going to do this because this is how I have found success. And also a lot of people that I know that are more successful than I, that are where I'm trying to go, they will kind of say the same thing. Having those relationships is great. Even just with you, like when I bought the house, I was like, hey, Steph, I got a
Mhm.
couple of questions. Like, tell
Right.
me
I
about
remember
your
that.
APU, and like
Mhm.
having that relationship. And it's mutual. Like you also can call me.
I also call you. No, I think that's super important. I mean, after you and I talked, I think I picked your brain too, and you'll call me and text me. And one time you were even like, "Oh, what? Let me know what your fees are." And I'm like, "No, like we're friends here. We're past that." So it's very relationship oriented. I think I posted something about it last week. I think that relationships have helped me in so many ways, especially in the ADU world, niching down. It's helped me just scale the business and create a pretty dope team and just be super intentional with who I surround myself with. And every time I go to some of these meetups where you and I have been, we're in rooms with people that really help me open up my mindset to things that I probably wouldn't have thought about either. So it's beyond just the relationship aspect. I think it's also how it helps you open up your mindset to other possibilities.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, like I said, I think we're going to be doing a lot together. So, how can people connect with you if they wanted your services and share that information?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way, find me on Instagram at Nick the Lawyer, Nick with no K. So NIC the Lawyer.
Mhm.
There, the link in bio has all the different ways to contact me. You also can go to the website, polymathlegal.com. That's POLYMATH legal.com. And there you can schedule a 15-minute free initial consultation. You can also send an email message through there. And also has our phone number, so you can call and schedule that way as well.
Awesome. Well, if you don't have any other closing thoughts, I really want to just thank you for being on the show and taking time. I know you're super busy and you got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So we'll definitely be in touch. I want you to be a speaker at that next event. I think you'll bring a lot of
Do
value.
it.
Let's do it. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm with it.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, always a pleasure to be with you. Happy to be on the
Same,
show.
same,
Happy to always be in your orb. So whatever I can do to help, let me know and I'll be
same
there.
here. Yeah, whatever I can help you with too. I don't know that I can help much, on my end, but I'm always a call away. So thank you again, and thank you to the listeners, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Awesome.
Peace out. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Nick.
Mm-hmm.